On Straight Talk Africa, the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The rebels say they will retaliate if attacked by the Intervention Brigade the United Nations recently approved for deployment to the Central African nation. Troops are expected to begin arriving within the coming months, with a specific mandate to carry out targeted offensive operations against armed groups. That's coming up next, right here on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome Straight Talk Africa. It's Wednesday, May 1st. I am Shaka Sali.
And hello, Shaka, and happy Wednesday to you and to all our viewers and listeners. I'm Mariama Diallo, your social media reporter.
Today, we'll discuss the quest for peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo as the United Nations Security Council clears the way for the world body's first ever offensive combat force in the Great Lakes region.
And coming up later in our STA inbox, you, our audience, have responded to the topic through your emails and Facebook comments, and we'll reveal some of them ahead on Straight Talk Africa.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo is among the most resource-rich nations in Central Africa, but its people are among the continent's poorest. Generations of DRC citizens have endured political turmoil and civil war. My colleague Paul Cisco has more.
Nearly 3 years ago, on June 30th, 2010, Congo celebrated 50 years of independence after 75 years of colonial rule. The Congo accedes on this 30th of June, 1960, with the full agreement and friendship of Belgium to independence and international sovereignty. Although independence brought a semblance of freedom, it did not bring peace or prosperity. Today, political scientist Ali Mazri sees the French-speaking Democratic Republic of Congo this way.
Potentially the largest French-speaking country in the world, could be larger one day than France, and could potentially a bigger actor even than France because of its mineral wealth. But at the moment it's retarded by the contradiction that it has wealth but not health.
Wealth but not health. Much of Central Africa and the DRC has been under a broad cloud of violent conflict since its colonial days. Today, some analysts fear the DRC is on the verge of all-out war. M23 rebels seized the provincial capital Goma late last year and held it for 2 weeks. Now the rebel group says it is ready for the UN Intervention Brigade, expected to arrive in the coming months. The United Nations Security Council recently renewed the large peacekeeping mission in Congo known as MONUSCO, and for the first time, the UN approved a mandate for its peacekeepers to carry out an offensive mission against armed militant groups in the region. Paul Cisco, VOA News.
Thanks, Paul, for that report. Now, for more on the significance of the UN Intervention Brigade, I am joined by my colleague, Margaret Bashir, VOA's United Nations correspondent, who joins us via Skype. Good afternoon, Margaret.
Hi, Shaka. Good to be with you.
How is the Big Apple?
It's finally springtime. Thanks.
Talk to us about this intervention force. To what extent, in your view, do you really think it's likely to be a game changer in Eastern DRC?
Well, I think it has the potential to be a game changer. I think the United Nations certainly hopes it will be a game changer. But, you know, the force is mandated to do targeted offensive operations. So this is sort of really the first time that a peacekeeping mission has an element that's peace enforcement. So they're going to go after the bad guys, in other words. And I think it can work, but only if it's combined with two other important elements. And in this case, that's if the DRC steps up and fulfills the commitments that it's made, in other words, to reform its military and to improve rule of law. And then the third element would be if this framework agreement that was signed in Addis in February with 11 countries and neighbors from the region, if that framework agreement for peace and security is implemented, then I think you have a chance for a game changer and an end to nearly 2 decades of human rights violations and conflict and misery in the Eastern Congo.
But Margaret, what about the other element, perhaps one of the most, in fact, important element, which is the rebel M23? Don't they matter?
Well, of course they matter. I mean, the intervention brigades are there to deal with the M23. And, you know, one of the things that we've heard a lot from the UN Secretary General and from Mary Robinson, the new Great Lakes envoy, she's in the region right now, is that the root causes of the conflict must be addressed. So I think that comes into it. You know, you have to address the root causes of why the M23 mutinied. You have to address this as one of the pieces of the puzzle to get to reconciliation and peace.
But what about the fact that we gather that the talks that had actually been going on in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, under the auspices of the Great Lakes region, appear, frankly, not to have brought out anything. In fact, some people have been referring to those talks in Kampala as peace jokes.
Well, I'm not in Kampala, so I don't think I can really speak to it. I can only tell you what I'm seeing from my perch here at the UN. And here at the UN, there's really a call for there to be political will in the region to support the intervention brigade. Let's not forget that SADC and the AU and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, these 3 regional bodies all called for this intervention brigade. They were the ones who asked for it. So I think that gives them a certain responsibility to make sure that this is a success.
What about the fact that the M23 themselves, including the regional powers, we're talking about Rwanda and Uganda, they really don't seem to be on the same page?
Well, publicly, Rwanda says they are, and they did vote. Right now, Rwanda is a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. Yesterday, they wrapped up a month-long presidency of the council. Some people felt it was a bit controversial that they were going to be on the council, particularly in light of problems going on in Congo. But they are there, and they are saying that they're going to uphold this mission, and they're going to uphold the framework agreement. So we need to see that really happen on the ground. I mean, that's the true test. You know, everyone can talk, but we have to see what happens on the ground to see if there really is the commitment to making it happen and for the interference to stop. And don't forget, in addition to the intervention brigades, the UN for the first time will be deploying unarmed drones in the skies over the eastern DRC. They're expecting to have about 3 of them. And they're going to be there to collect information on arms embargo violators and on the movement of rebel groups such as the M23. So there's going to be a lot more tools at the disposal of the UN and of MONUSCO. So hopefully maybe this will help deter countries from interfering. And it might hopefully deter the rebel groups from trying to make advances on cities like Goma again.
What about the intervention brigade, Margaret? How soon is it likely to be deployed? Because we've been hearing June and July.
Well, when they passed the resolution at the end of March, the Security Council expected it to take about 2 months for it to be on the ground. And I checked with peacekeeping today. They tell me that there's a planning team on the ground in Congo right now, and that they expect a significant number of the 3,000, or roughly 3,000 troops in the intervention brigades to be in place, deployed in the latter half of May. So we're looking in about 2 or 3 more weeks. But don't forget, they're not all new troops coming from outside. One of the battalions is already a part of MONUSCO, so they're just being redeployed from within Congo. So the deployment should move rapidly now that they have the planning team on the ground.
Margaret, there are some doubting Thomases who have been saying that there is really no political will, especially from the UN Security Council, that if in fact New York wanted to help solve the problem, that this problem in the Congo would in fact have been solved yesterday. I was a kid, and I told you earlier that I was born and grew up in Kabale, which is not very far from where the problems are. From the time the Congo got independence in 1960, we've been hearing about UN peacekeeping forces. And this is 50 years later. We're still talking about the same thing.
Right. Well, I don't think you can lay the blame for that at the feet of the United Nations. I think a lot of it has to go to the feet of the government of Congo. When I was in Kinshasa 2 years ago in May of 2010, President Kabila did not want MONUC, which is the predecessor of MONUSCO, the previous UN mission, to remain. He wanted them to go because it was time, it was coming up on that 50th anniversary of independence, and he wanted to show that he was in charge and his military was strong, and he didn't want peacekeepers there because he thought it made him look weak. And the UN Security Council had to basically appeal to him to keep them. And that's when they changed their name to MONUSCO, became a stabilization mission, slightly changed their mandate. But as we have seen in the past 2.5 years, 3 years, they really still need outside help. The FARDC is not capable of protecting civilians in the eastern DRC. In fact, as we have seen in Minova in November, 2 battalions have been accused of raping 126 women in the eastern DRC. So how can this military protect its people when it's, accused of atrocities against them? So I don't think you can lay all the blame at the feet of the UN. They're doing the best they can with what they have.
Well, thanks very much, Margaret, for your insight.
Thanks, Shaka. Good to talk with you.
You're most welcome. Now, joining us on today's program are 2 distinguished guests. First, here in our Washington studio is Claude Gatebuke, Executive Director and co-founder of the African Great Lakes Action Network, a non-profit organization that is committed to raising awareness about issues of war, genocide, conflict, and human rights violations. Mr. Gatebuke is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. It's a pleasure, of course, finally meeting you here in Studio 52, Mr. Gatebuke.
Thank you for having me.
Is it Gatebuke or
Yes,
Gatebuke?
Gatebuke.
Gatebuke.
Yep.
Very interesting. And joining us on the phone from Bunagana in southwestern Uganda is Rene Abandi, spokesman for the March 23 movement, also known as M23. Well, it's a pleasure, of course, Mr. Abandi, to host you once again on Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Now, Mr. Abandi, in my particular language, Abandi would mean that you are others. But in this particular case,
Yes.
You really seem to be the only person occupying that name. Are you with others?
Yeah, I'm always with others. So alone, I'm nothing. But if I'm others, I realize myself.
I see. Later in the program, we will give you, the audience, a chance to call and talk with our guests. The number to call is 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. Let me come to you, Claude. You heard, of course, what my colleague in New York said about the UN. If you were to talk to me from the deepest, better part of the bottom of your Great Lakes region and heart, heart and soul, do you sincerely think that this is a game changer?
I think it is potentially a game changer, but I don't think that the UN is doing the most with what they have. Let me start with why I think it may be a game changer. We've seen previously in Sierra Leone when intervention troops went in and the RUF, the ruthless rebels who were amputating civilians, just like the M23 rebels are doing today, started shooting at the intervention troops and ended up losing the war. So hopefully that's what happens in Congo. But the issue, what I think the UN is coming short is there is an arms embargo. There has been proof and evidence showing that countries, Rwanda, Uganda, are violating the arms embargo by the UN, and the UN has not sanctioned them. I think that should be done, and they have the tools. If they had the political will and are doing the most with what they have, they would do that. And without that, without showing some muscle, they are going to get shot at. They've already killed a peacekeeper in Bunagana previously last summer, and there's nothing that's going to stop the M23 rebels from shooting at these UN intervention troops.
I see. Before we pause for a short break, we would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is on the social networking website, Facebook. Just enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa, become a fan, and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.
On October 2012, the UN Security Council announces its intention to impose sanctions against the M23 rebel group movement for breaking the DRC's arms embargo. Then, a UN panel says Rwanda and Uganda have been supplying M23 with weapons and support, which both countries deny. A month later, M23 troops briefly entered Goma, the main city in the resources-rich east, before withdrawing on promise government will release some of their supporters. In February of this year, representatives of 11 African countries signed an accord in Ethiopia pledging to help end the conflict in the DRC. M23 declares a ceasefire ahead of the talks.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. What is your opinion about today's topic? Call us at 202-619-3111. U.S. country code 1. When you call, remember the following. Ask only one question, keep your comment brief, and turn down the volume on your radio or television. Now let's return to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui. Claude, you gave an example of Sierra Leone during the days, of course, when you had a civil war, and the key combatants there, of course, was the RUF, the Revolutionary United Front group belonging to then Corporal Fode Sanko. And, of course, the ECOMAG troops and all that kind of stuff, and the United Nations. But what you probably forgot or didn't say, that it wasn't really the UN that finally made a difference. It was the British Army.
That's correct. It was done by the British Army, but it was important to end the cycle of violence, to end the atrocities and the killings, the incessant killings of civilians by the RUF troops. The UN today has an opportunity to show that they can actually also do that. This is one way out for the UN, because the other way is to do it right and hold accountable not only the countries that are committing or supporting the M23 who are committing these atrocities, but also the individuals who are have been named in various reports. There's Rwanda's Defense Minister General James Kabarebe. There is Rwanda's Military Chief of Staff Charles Kayonga. There is President Kagame's advisor Jack Nziza, and various others who have been named in multiple reports showing phone calls, phone records from them to M23 leaders. Walking paths on satellite pictures from military barracks in Rwanda to the M23 headquarters. This is a blatant violation of arms embargo, and there are punishments for that, and the UN should follow its rules.
Are you suggesting that the M23 are appendages of Rwanda, that they are in fact not a legitimate rebel group that has grievances, legitimate grievances, that are the reason why we have a problem in the DRC?
Legitimate grievances by the M23?
Yes.
This is a group that's out there, claims they have problems with the government in Kinshasa, are in the farthest part of the country from Kinshasa, killing civilians, abducting 12-year-olds, making them sexual slaves, and making child soldiers. This group, it's been proven they are not a rebel group out of Congo. This is the Rwandan military, and to some extent, the Ugandan military invading the Congo.
Really?
Yes.
Let's go to Mr. Avandi. Mr. Avandi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
Could you please respond to some of these charges from your fellow panelists?
First of all, I would like to tell to the opinion that Claude Gatebuke is in opposition.
Opposition of where?
I think you can understand that is the only referring to. I think he made and what, but I think he has his own cause. He's trying this opportunity, I think, to opinion which will help his cause to advance. I'd like to say that statistics prove can show that Congolese army is the one which is the most involved in rape, in violation of human rights, and it's something which is known. For example, in November last year, they raped more than 100 of ladies in Minova, that is South Kivu, near Goma. But at the same time, we can somehow also make a junction with what you said about the resolution, which is making the brigade. In the same resolution, in the Security Council, in its resolution, I think 289, they recognize that the causes of the most important cause of problems of Congolese situation is the failure of the most corrupted regime in the world, which is Kinshasa's regime. So that regime, which is corrupt and which is really tyrannic, is the main problem that Congolese we are facing. So with that, I would like also to come back on what Claude said. When he said that M23 was created by Rwanda and Uganda, if he knows a bit the history of Congo and what is happening in Congo, you know, in Katanga, which is in south, Katanga, there is a rebellion movement called Katanga. In Ituri, there are rebellions. In Kasai, there are rebellions. Even there are rebellions who are against Rwanda, like FDLR, and others who are against Uganda, like Kony. I don't know how he can find a short way to explain all problems of Congo in a win of Kigali and Kampala. And I would also like to explain to the opinion that M23 is still hope that the solution will be political, as said Madam Mary Robinson, the special envoy for the Great Lakes. She said the solution will be more political than military. And we are doing all our best to help to give our proposals for that and our will, our political will, so that problems in Congo can be solved politically, not military. Because, as even the Secretary General of UN said, there is no really military solution. It's written in the same resolution, which is creating the brigade. So the war, what we are facing now, is a consequence of root causes of the conflict. So we have to deal with causes of the conflict, not more rather than dealing with consequences. So, and you may consider that the majority of militias who are in the East, operating in the East, they are really allied to the government. They were created by the government of Kinshasa. So, looking on M23 as if it was the problem of Eastern Congo is really misunderstanding the root causes of what we are living here. I agree that this brigade is not a solution, and I agree with the region which created the framework of Kampala and even the framework of Addis Ababa, because we can't find peace if we avoid peaceful means. It is very important. We shall reach to peace only if we are using peaceful means.
Now,
And for
Rene,
M23 is very important. Yes, sir?
Now, Rene, I think your point is pretty much well made. If indeed you are legitimate rebels, what can you tell the global world, the global audience that you are interacting with, that you are in fact fighting for? What are the fundamental root causes of your problems? What are you fighting for?
First of all, the bad governance of the country. As I said, we are the most corrupt. We have the most corrupted regime in the world. That is very important. There is bad governance. People are refugees and displaced are refugees in neighbor countries. We are seeking for the return of refugees for more than 10 years, almost 20 years. We are seeking for the right of those people to come back in the country. IDPs and the reconciliation among the communities. We are seeking for, we have a commission, a national commission for reconciliation. We are seeking again to establish the reconciliation and to rebuild in Eastern Congo in creating a national disaster zone. The government doesn't want to hear about the creation of a national disaster zone where people are suffering so much. So we think those problems can sit down.
How do you respond to some critics, Rene, who have been saying that they have looked at you, the way you dress, for example, you dress like a regular army, that you don't look like rebels. You do have sophisticated logistics. You have a lot of trucks and what have you. In fact, you remind some the rebels of Nicaragua in the 1970s, the ones that used to be called Contras, the 9 to 5 p.m. rebel fighters in Nicaragua.
What is true is that the military wing of all they deserted from their uniforms, weapons. So as the other side, they want to be smart. Think when they deserted now, and they deserted because let me tell you one thing, Mr. Shaka. If you were Congolese, really, if you were Congolese and can't live in this country the way you rule and accept the status quo, I think a normal Congolese may be in insurgency and against the order which is here, which really is chaotic. So, as we really need a change, we have to begin by ourselves being as smart as possible. So, our soldiers deserted from the government side and they came with their uniforms and their weapons.
What relationship do you have with Laurent Kunda, who, of course, reportedly lives in the Rwandan capital, Kigali? Do you have any relationship with him?
Laurent Kunda, General Laurent Kunda is one of, first of all, he's our fellow, he's a Congolese, a general with the Congolese army, and who also tried problems which are in Congo, and they say he was himself a problem. And if you try, unfortunately, not using in a way that you will want or international community.
I'm afraid we do have a bad line. They will have to call you back. We have to go for a break and they will call you back. You are tuned in to Straight Talk Africa. We'll have more on our discussion in a moment. But first, here is Mariama Diaro. Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. Still to come, we'll reveal some of the outstanding feedback we've received in our STA inbox. But first, here is our letter of the week from a fan who responded to our question of the week.
A Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan, Musafare Numayashi Nyamakuti, originally from Mutare in Zimbabwe, but now living in Pretoria in South Africa, writes, "In any war, the first casualty of conflict is truth. The finger pointing will continue and neither side will accept blame. Instead of playing the blame game, both sides must be willing to progress. Many compromises are needed in order to establish faith among the parties involved.
World headlines, you know there's more to the story. That's why we're on assignment. Alex Villarreal, Imran Siddiqui, and Powerhouse reporting from the angles no one else is telling, in the places no one else will go, getting the story behind the story.
On Assignment is next. Let's go.
On Assignment. Get more or become a broadcast partner by finding us on Facebook.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. Call us now with your questions and comments. The number 202-619-3111. And the U.S. country code is 1. Call us collect and we'll pay for the call. Or call directs and we'll call you right back. Remember to keep your questions brief. Now back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui. Welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. Once again, it's time to bring in my colleague and social media reporter, Mariama Diaro. Take it away, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. On March 28th, the United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2098, which cleared the way for the world's body's first ever offensive combat force. The mandate of this intervention brigade, comprised of infantry battalions from Tanzania, South Africa, Mozambique, and Malawi, is to neutralize and disarm the M23 rebels and other armed groups, of course, in the Eastern Kivu region of the DRC. The Congolese rebel group has promised to retaliate if it's attacked by the UN's approved force of more than 2,500 troops. This growing situation leads us to our question of the week for today's program. Will the United Nations Special Intervention Brigade be able to restore peace and security in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo? Well, we'll go right to your answers and begin with a comment from Badiamina Jazz Maruva from South Africa, who writes, "Instead of a toothless United Nations, let's use South Africa and Nigeria to restore peace in this continent. Western countries don't care about us. All they care about is the wealth and minerals they are getting illegally." I think it's a little bit harsh, but let's see what Walimbua Walter, a Facebook fan from Entebbe in Uganda, has to say. "God have mercy, because the UN might cause more conflict. DRC needs to settle its own problems with its intrusive neighbors. The UN should just facilitate the process." Shaka, it seems like there's a lack of confidence in the United Nations and also in the West in general, according to the two comments I just mentioned.
Well, I hear you, Mariama, and it looks obviously that there is a reason sometimes for people to have no confidence in the international organizations. But what about a lot of people who seem not to have confidence in their own leaders, their own governments? Isn't that perhaps the major problem, why we have problems in the Great Lakes region?
That is definitely part of the problem. You've got governments all over that region. I mean, just straight from the Horn all the way to the western part of the country. The central part is littered with dictators and ruthless, murderous leaders who continue to oppress and kill their own citizens. And in the Great Lakes region especially, we've got some of the most ruthless dictators.
How can you call them dictators? These are people who call themselves freedom fighters.
Freedom for who? Freedom for who? They fought wars claiming they're bringing democracy to the countries that they're leading now or misleading. And they got into those countries and became even more oppressive than some of the previous regimes. They continue, a lot of their populations continue to run away from their countries. Anyone who speaks out is jailed. Journalists are sent to jail on a regular basis.
We'll come to that.
In these
we'll
countries.
Come to a little bit on that later. Mariama, take it away again.
Well, we'll move on to other comments, and this time Shanda Nsofu, who lives in Kasama, Zambia, sent this brief post on our Facebook page saying, yes, the UN Special Force can bring peace as long as it is armed to the teeth. Well, from the West African capital, Accra, Nana Kouassi Agyemen writes, I really admire the effort put up by the United Nations, but when it's time for them to get tough, they want to negotiate. And finally, Toto Kabatunanga from Lubumbashi, and I want to take advantage and say hello to our friends in Lubum in the DRC in Congo. He asked this question: how long has the UN and its MONUSCO troops been in the DRC? It's the biggest UN mission ever, and yet there is no sight of peace. Kofi Annan was there and in that region, and the region didn't have peace. And Ban Ki-moon is not doing much either. Well, it seems like Toto doesn't believe in the UN's ability to bring peace either to the nation. Shaka?
I think I can understand some of these concerns, frankly, because as I said a little bit earlier, when I was a kid, the first time I heard about United Nations organization, they used to call it UNO, UNO, was because these folks were in neighboring Congo. And of course, later you had refugees from neighboring Rwanda in 1959 and what have you. Do you really think, as you said, that part of the problem is the people you call our own dictators who call themselves freedom fighters?
I totally believe that part of the problem in the region and in most countries, in most places, dictators and dictatorships and lack of freedoms, for the most part, are the leading cause for mass atrocities.
But
you look at various places.
I have had an opportunity, Claude, to meet some of these people you call dictators. We're talking about Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. In fact, I should call him General Yoweri Museveni, retired but certainly not tired. I have had the opportunity to meet Major General Paul Kagame. These are some of the people that you might be alluding to. I have had the opportunity to meet Joseph Kabila. But these are people who sincerely at least tell you or believe that they are freedom fighters. They were fighting for the freedom of their own people. Museveni has gone to the extent of saying, telling the Ugandan people that I brought you democracy. He has won several elections. He doesn't even have to worry about whether the quality of the election is good. He will tell you that Uganda holds periodic elections. So what's wrong with that?
I think holding elections is not enough to demonstrate democracy. When the Ugandan election was going on, a lot of people in opposition were assaulted. People were put in jail. I saw videos of the women in opposition getting assaulted by the police. People were put in vans and sprayed with pepper spray. In Rwanda, it was even worse. The vice president of the Democratic Green Party was assassinated, his head cut off. Journalists were killed. One of them was killed and others were sent to jail. A lot of people were sent into exile. People were jailed over and over. Everyone who had an opportunity and a chance to actually contest the election and pose a real challenge to these two presidents, to Kagame and to Museveni, especially in Rwanda, they were put in jail before the elections.
But these leaders say that they are not responsible for the death of those people you are talking about. It is the enemies of the state who come and do those bad things so that they can undermine the integrity of those governments.
Well, if it's being done by the police, I'm not sure how you get away with saying that those are the enemy of the state. A lot of these are being used by state authority to commit these acts, to commit these crimes against their own citizens. And so I do think that it's dictatorship that is a major problem.
Well, you have heard it all, Mariama, and thanks, of course, for bringing us this week's audience reaction.
Well, thanks, Shaka. That's unfortunately all the feedback we have for now. We appreciate all the responses. Please keep them coming. Before I go, just a reminder, we would like to hear from you, so drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com. Once again, for our radio listeners, Our email address is africatv@voanews.com. Or post your comment on our Facebook page. Just enter keywords Straight Talk Africa. Also, be sure to visit us online at voaafrica.com. Now let's take a look at what's on tap for next week.
Next week on Straight Talk Africa, we'll discuss the continent at large and open our phone lines so you can help us set the agenda and discuss the issues that are most important to you. We'll revisit the situations in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, and talk about continued instability in Mali. We particularly want to hear from the younger members of our audience. So join us next week with your questions, concerns, and solutions right here on The Voice of America.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Of course, that was Mariama, a descendant of Othman Don Fodio, the revolutionary reformer of the once great Fulani Kingdom in West Africa. A reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa, and today's topic, the quest for peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. If you wish to participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111, and the U.S. country code is 1. I gather that we do have a caller from South Africa. South Africa? Are you on the line, South Africa?
Oh, gosh, we're getting a broken line. I don't know what's going on.
Can you hear me?
Hello? No, I can't hear you, Shaka.
You can hear me now?
No. Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Is it Jacob? Yeah, it's Jacob here.
Yes. What is your question?
Okay, good evening, Shaka.
I am terrific. How are you today, my brother?
I'm well, thank you. And good evening to Renee and Claude.
Thank you.
And the rest of the panel. Let me start off by saying the root cause of the problems in the Congo, like I said before, is actually the people of the Congo themselves, especially the ruling party. Like I said, Joseph Kabila was never democratically elected. The last time you had Molenga on the panel, who told a white lie to the viewers of Voice of America that Kabila was elected in South Africa at Sun City, which was a white lie. He was never elected by the people of the Congo at Sun City. What happened at Sun City, there was so much discord and infighting. The people of the Congo went back to the Congo without electing a president, and they went back. Are you with me, Shaka?
I'm with you.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is Joseph Kabila wasn't supposed to have been elected as president when he was 32 years old, when he had no political experience, no political clout, he had no political support, and to crown it all, he had no political vision for the Congo. What you see today, the infighting and the rebel groups after rebel group after rebel group that are springing up, is because of Joseph Kabila and his political party. Why must our people in South Africa go sacrifice their sons and daughters for Joseph Kabila? That's what I can understand, because we're going to now make up the bulk of the intervention group in the Congo when they declare war against the M23 rebels, which is so unfair. I don't think we should go and fight that war for Joseph Kabila because he was never democratically elected.
Now, let me ask you a question. My brother in South Africa, you talk about how Joseph Kabila did not have experience. This is a man, whether you like him or not, who has been in that seat since the death of his father back in 2001. So he can actually claim to have been president of the DRC at least for 12 years. Unless, of course, if you are going to argue that there is no institute that he went to study to become a president, and I don't think there is one, but otherwise the man is a president of his country. A reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please don't go away.
On March 7th, 2013, Bertrand Bizimbwa, the former M23 rebels' civilian spokesman, is appointed as their new leader. His appointment follows the forceful exit of Bishop Jean-Marie Runiga, president of the M23 rebel military faction accused of treason. On March 18th of 2013, alleged M23 founder Bosco Ntaganda surrenders to U.S. Embassy officials in Rwanda and is transferred to the ICC in The Hague to face war crimes charges. On March 28th of this year, the UN Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2098, which cleared the way for the world body's first ever offensive combat force. Last month, the M23 political leader Bertrand Bizimbwa issues an open letter warning that M23 would defeat the UN brigade.
Whether you live in Somalia, Senegal, Nigeria, or Zimbabwe, from every corner of sub-Saharan Africa, turn to us for information and experts to help you improve health and life, for you and your family, for your health. Africa Health Network, only on VOA. If you like today's show, please write and tell us what you think or give us some suggestions. Be sure to tell us what station you're tuned into. Our address, Straight Talk Africa, Voice of America, 330 Independence Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20237 USA. Or send us an email at africatv@voanews.com. Log on to our website at voaafrica.com. Or post your comments on Facebook. Keywords Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gidhui, and welcome back. If you have just joined us, our distinguished guests are Claude Gatebuke, Executive Director and co-founder of the African Great Lakes Action Network, a non-profit organization that committed to raising awareness about issues of war, genocide, conflict, and human rights violations. Mr. Gatebuke is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. And Rene Abandi, spokesman for the March 23 movement, also known as M23. Mr. Abandi joins us on the phone from Bunagana, Western Uganda. I have to say, gentlemen, that I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host the two of you.
It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Abandi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, sir. Thank you, sir.
How do you respond to people, Abandi, who are saying that what you are really fighting for is power, that you are fighting for resources, you're fighting for the control of coltan, diamond, gold, timber, coffee, and what have you, so that you can live a terrific life?
Let me begin by say that there is a huge propaganda against us, and the government is using all his means. And the area where we are, there is no gold, there is no minerals, there is no coltan, there is nothing of all those things. It's an area known, and since we are fighting against this government on a political way and sometimes with military means, our area doesn't have nothing of those stories they say about minerals.
How can you say that? How can you say that? How can you say that, Rene, when a man called Bosco Ntaganda, who is now in The Hague, was incredibly rich and was part of you until recently? He was very rich. He was dealing in gold, coltan, you name it.
They have nothing to say. He was
I'm afraid
right since the beginning, and when he wanted even to interfere in our matters in our area, we defeated him, and he is in Hague. It's because of he was defeated by Christopher. He's not one of us, and if he became rich, you know, he used to operate in Ituri, where gold is, not here in Matisi and Ruchuru, our areas, which have nothing which resemble on. But I would like.
So if you can get rid, if you can, in fact, if you can
allow
get,
me, sir.
Excuse me, sir.
Please.
If you can
Please,
get rid of Bosco Ntaganda, are you telling me that you cannot access his assets?
I have nothing to deal with Bosco Ntaganda. There is something you said which is not right, sir. Allow me to say the truth. M23 didn't write that it will defeat the UN brigade. M23 said it will defend itself if attacked. And it said M23 wants a peaceful solution. M23 revealed that
well, I'm afraid that we do have a bad line, really. As such, it's not possible for us to continue listening to the beautiful voice from Bunagana. Let's go to South Africa, and is it Demujamin or Benjamin?
Beautiful voice. Okay, hello.
Hello.
Let's go to South Africa, and
can you hear me?
Are you Benjamin or Benjamin?
Benjamin, I am Benjamin.
You are Benjamin, of course. You are Benjamin.
Yes.
I'm being told here that somebody's inventing your
name. My question is, I would like to put a question to Abendi, Rene. Abandi.
Yes, please.
Yes, but Abandi they said that when in the area that they're occupying, there is no resources. And then my question also is about Bosco Ntaganda. Bosco Ntaganda, can Abandi tell me if Bosco Ntaganda is a Congolese? Then we can know if what he's telling us is true. Because we know that Bosco Ntaganda was born in Rwanda and he crossed in Congo as a refugee when he was still young. And then he studied in the Kivu. From there, he was in the army of M23. We know that he was born in Rwanda. Can he tell us, from the Rwandese parent, can he, Abandi, tell us if Bosco Ntaganda is a Congolese? Secondly, Rwanda is exporting coltan. Can Babandi tell us from where Rwanda got this coltan that they're exporting? There is no coltan in the country. From which country, for where they produce this mineral called coltan? That are my two questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are you there, Mr. Bandi? Are you there?
Well, I'm not a spokesperson of Rwanda, so I can't on it no. So, and second,
Rene,
he doesn't know. Rwanda has, he can go there and we found the coltan. I think he doesn't know very well. And so Bosco Ntaganda, if he's Congolese or Rwandese, it's not my matter. To even the spokesperson of the government of Kinshasa said it is on the responsibility of the judge to establish which citizenship is for Ntaganda. So for me, it's not my matter. What I know is that we went off with Ntaganda. Ntaganda was defeated when he tried to attack us, and he went because he ran away. So we have a responsibility in somehow handing him over to oblige him to run away, to flee, and to go to hell.
I see. Let me come to you, Claude. What about the view, frankly, that most of these players in the region are really fighting for resources, control of resources? We know that the South Africans, for example, would like to access electricity via Inga Dam. We know that very clearly. We know that they have an interest in Mbujimai, the diamond capital of the world. We know that a lot of people are interested in the gold from Kisangani and what have you, timber and gold. I mean, we know what happened when Uganda and the armies of Uganda and Rwanda, which had gone to the Congo, allegedly to stop what they called genocide, they ended up turning guns against each other because they were fighting over resources. We also know that some of the leaders in that region, they became presidents, became ministers because of AK-47. Is it possible that that could in fact have set a negative precedent? That's why everybody wants to be a president, wants to be a minister.
Absolutely. I absolutely think that when you have power and when you can access it through illegal means by killing people and killing your way to power and then accessing power and having total control of power, then you have access to the resources. That is the exact reason why the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is occupied. It's occupied because Rwanda and Uganda, who are not as endowed as their neighbor, the DRC, has all these resources and they want to exploit them. Since 1997, after the invasion of Congo, the exports of minerals from Rwanda, from Uganda, that aren't present in those countries have spiked up to the billions. Since 1996, since the invasion. And this has been going on forever. And another thing is, you can see by how quickly Bosco Ntaganda, the leader of the M23 up until he went to The Hague, was enriching himself, how rich he became and how quickly that happened. You know, as soon as he had control of that region, he had money, he had power, he could kill, he could steal, he could do whatever he wanted.
From California, going to Goma, landing to Goma for gold deals.
Exactly. Yeah. When Rwanda and Uganda fought in Kisangani and 3,000 Congolese people died, innocent people, they were fighting over a diamond mine.
Well, I would like to say, by the way, that we invited the ambassador of the DRC to this show, but up to now, we have not heard from the embassy. So it's not that we didn't try, because frankly, they would be defending themselves or putting their points of view across. Well, what about some who would say that we are probably, frankly, raising a wrong argument, that in fact what Africa needs is the removal of these colonial inherited boundaries so that we are the same people. People can start interacting and so are ideas and what have you.
There is no issue with that, but right now, like I said, that part of Africa, especially the central part of Africa, the most chaotic part of Africa, you know, looking from the Horn all the way to the western part to, you know, the Congo. These countries are in shambles because of human rights violations all over the place. Now, it's all well and good to unite all Africans. It's all well and good to take away these boundaries, but where do you start? When you have neighbors who are invading another neighbor to take their resources and kill their people and rape their children and form rebellion after rebellion after rebellion, you know, basically just changing acronyms from the CNDP to the M23.
More people will be involved and they will be interested in keeping the peace rather than fighting for very small fiefdoms. Well, on that note, thanks to our distinguished guests, Claude Gatebuke, Executive Director and co-founder of the African Great Lakes Action Network, and Rene Avandi, spokesman for the March 23 movement, also known as M23. Mr. Avandi, who joined us on the phone from Bunagana in southwestern Uganda, thanks to affiliate stations, along with our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to us on the Voice of America, special English is coming up next. And tomorrow morning, it's Daybreak Africa with James Bate. Also, don't forget to tune into Voice of America's newest program, To the Continent, Africa 54, a 30-minute daily television magazine program that features what's happening in news, health, sports, and lifestyle. On behalf of the Voice of America, thanks for tuning into Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter. And please remember to keep the African hopes alive.